you had the idea?
Paige, are you still there?
You had the idea. You had the idea, and then you were on the track, and then you just went off on a tangent. I don't think you can even hear me.
Paige Jones, over now.
Back on track.
All right, we're back. You're like, all right, here's. All right, we're back with Miss Bassett. Oh no,
Welcome.
do now.
The world of ADD.
What's telling you?
This is the intro.
I guess.
My ab hurts. Oh no.
Hey guys, I'm Paige Jones, your narrator. Today we're going to talk about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or more commonly referred to as ADHD. Who is ADHD? What is ADHD? Where is ADHD? Why is ADHD? These questions we ask. In this documentary, we answer. Let's ride. Hey guys, I'm Paige, still, and I'm now cleaner than ever. So up next we have an interview with Brooke Jones, my sister and the girl who diagnosed me. So all I have to say is she knows a lot. She's a teacher. She has a special ed degree. She did Teach for America. She's a smart girl. She knows a lot. Here she is.
So for the first question, what have you learned about classroom management with students with ADD/ADHD? I've learned that can look different depending on the type of ADD. If it's inattentive type, you need to have more check-ins with the students because they're going to be zoning off typically. Whereas ADHD, you're going to need to do a lot of kinesthetic learning with the students to make sure that they're moving around, and when they move around, they're doing it purposefully and they're engaged. If having students with ADHD, having them sit in a desk for 90 minutes just isn't feasible, and it doesn't help the teacher or the student at all achieve any of the learning objectives.
Let's talk now with Miss Kempner. She worked for the CIA. She's a psychologist. She's a teacher. What more can she do? I can't name anything else. So we thought, gotta interview this girl for our documentary. Here she is.
What I've learned over the years with students with ADHD is it's just good to employ different interventions depending on the child. I don't think the interventions are one size fits all. A lot of standard interventions include preferential seating away from distractions, extra time, rephrasing of directions, chunking assignments into small steps. And while that's good most of the time, I think it really depends on the student and how they manifest different symptoms.
Yeah. You can talk the talk about classroom management, but is your class actually conducive?
I think that working as a special ed teacher for the last 3 years previous to this year gave me a lot of experience with ADD, and I was able to have a real understanding of what it can look like, because it can be different for every student. It can be more severe in some cases, more moderate. It really depends. And so I feel like it is because I feel like myself, and then I also have a co-teacher, are willing to make sure that we do whatever it takes for the individual student. So if we have 5 students with ADD, knowing that it might look different for 5 students and making sure that we give that child the resources, however that, whatever that might look like, in order for them to access the learning.
I think my classroom can be conducive in the sense that it's set up in a horseshoe, so nobody can hide in the back. I try to segment things and do a lot of one-on-one type of assignments, but I think as in any classroom, there's going to be some pedagogical techniques which help ADHD kids and some that will be a little bit of a challenge for them. And so I think the best thing you can do is to give students every type of learning opportunity style, because that way they can learn new strategies to try to at least try to tackle these different strategies and see if they can grow in that area, but then also help them celebrate by doing tactics that they really thrive with. And so I think basically it comes down to having a lot of different techniques, but giving support to kids to make sure that they can embrace these challenges.
All aboard, Mr. Crane, the psychologist interview up now.
ADHD primarily has a number of features, including impulsivity, distractibility, executive functioning difficulties, being tired at the end of the day, being very distracted. And it kind of affects us in a number of different ways. First is the executive functioning, which is really your planning, your organization, your working memory, sequencing, ability to time manage, and really kind of foresee the future with some of the decisions that people have the tendency to make. It affects people academically in school. Students who are affected by ADHD usually have some challenges with motivation, or they're very motivated and they just get frustrated with the situation that they're pressed with, because they want to do well, and no matter how hard they try, sometimes they're very discouraged. So it reduces the motivation in and of itself.
So for a school psychologist, what we are told is that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, that the age of onset is typically prior to age 7, that you often see a triad of behaviors. You often see heightened levels of inattention, lack of focus, inability to follow multi-step directions, disorganization. You may ask the child, go get your shoes and your coat, and they will go and on their way get distracted and forget what they were doing and forget to get whatever you asked and forget to come back to you. So the inattention piece may be there. The hyperactivity, where they act like they're driven by a motor. They can't slow down. They're always jumping up out of their seat in school. They can't sit for prolonged periods in like a church service or a doctor's office, or contain all that energy that they have. And the last component is often impulsivity, where they may blurt out answers in school or take actions without thinking. So those are pretty much the 3 major types of behaviors you often see.
Roll that next clip.
Unfortunately, drug use is a little bit more common with individuals that are diagnosed with ADHD, and people very often need to kind of pick up the pieces after they're done, whatever is affecting them. Emotionally, anxiety and depression are commonly associated with ADHD. You've got a little bit of a chicken and the egg type of situation there, because anxiety and depression can cause symptoms of ADHD, but ADHD in and of itself can also cause anxiety and depression. When people perseverate and worry, it's very challenging to pay attention. So there's a lot of different factors that go in. It's a very multifaceted and dynamic experience.
Not yet. But for kids with ADHD, they're often left wishing school was out for the summer, because school often acts as a hardship, a struggle for those with ADHD. Grant, give me more.
Hi.
Hello.
When were you diagnosed?
Do you want me to say my name and stuff?
No, it's fine.
Okay. I was diagnosed at the beginning of this year.
All right. And then how has school been affected by your ADHD?
My schoolwork's been affected because in elementary school and middle school I coasted by because the schoolwork was fairly easy, and then when I got to high school my grades started dropping, and that affected my overall GPA.
Yeah. And then would you say school has been accommodating to your ADHD?
Not really, but when I told my guidance counselor that I had ADD, she was just like, oh, cool.
Okay, got it.
Hey ADHD kids, how has your ADHD affected your school life? Also, has the school been accommodating to your ADHD? Let us know. Sorry.
I was diagnosed in the summer going into 6th grade.
And how has ADHD affected you in school?
It makes things harder, I think. There have been days when I forget my medicine and it's just like a waste of a day. I kind of just sit there and nothing actually gets done. There was a day that I had to do something in individual family development and that piece of paper was illegible because my handwriting was all over the place, so that was kind of awkward. Yeah, it just makes things take longer, I think.
Would you say that school is accommodating to your ADHD?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the class, accommodating wise. Because like for math, you know, sitting in the front of the room and getting extra time on tests is very helpful. But for things like history and English, I don't really need that as much. So there's nothing really to be accommodated for that because it doesn't take as long to think of answers for that.
Hi, I'm Paige. I was diagnosed with ADD last year in May of 2015. It affects me when in regards to school because it definitely has made everything just overall a lot more challenging, specifically with math is my biggest struggle. It definitely, when I was younger, because I was diagnosed so late, when I was younger, it just like I was so bad at math. And I was like, oh, I'm just like not good at school. Like, that's a bummer. Like, I guess that's it. And, you know, teachers would always think you're not trying hard enough, but you're like, no, I'm doing the best I can. Like, don't give up on me. And so it's really sad, but it's okay because now I have a diagnosis and I take medication for it, which is very helpful. And school has definitely been accommodating in the sense that, like, luckily a lot of my teachers do follow, like, and let me, you know, pull out that 504 plan if I need it. However, there are definitely some teachers that don't necessarily think, like, it's necessary, even though it's, like, you know it is, which is kind of rough. But overall, definitely, I think schools, you know, handles it pretty well. It's, like, kind of common, I'd say. All right, thank you.
Do you want to say how your diagnosis changed your life? Or how do you feel off/on meds? That's a good one.
When I'm on my medication, I think my personality is the same. A lot of people think it changes your personality. My personality is the same, but I think I'm a lot calmer and I'm a lot more coherent. And like overall, a lot more like straightforward, I think, than when I'm off of medication. I'm definitely like a little bit more just like all over the place. Definitely. My driving's worse. That's true. Diagnosis?
So for school professionals, we cannot give a medical diagnosis. We provide an educational classification. So onset prior to age 7, the type of behaviors I just described to you, and then adverse educational impact. So the disorder, the disability, the disabling condition is impacting the child's ability to learn, their ability to gain academic information and knowledge, and to socially interact with their peers.
I'd say in general, first of all, I think it's better nowadays. They often won't tell the teacher the diagnosis of ADHD. What generally happens is the student gets an IEP, it's an individualized educational plan, and there's a page in that packet that has their learning plan of what their modifications would be in the classroom. So the teacher will see how to modify, but not necessarily what the disability or learning challenge is. And I think that's better so the teacher doesn't label the kid and think, oh, you know, this student has ADHD, they're probably going to act out, or they're going to this, or they're going to that. Because there have been plenty of times where I've had students who have ADHD and you would never know. And I think that's better because you don't want to treat someone like their challenge defines who they are as a person. So what I've learned is not to generalize about students who have it.
Hey, so typically boys are a little more, you know, active, little space invaders. Where girls are typically, you know, head in the clouds, space cadets, if you will. So does that have anything to do with how people perceive those kids with ADHD? Does gender make a difference? Let's find out.
Affects about 11% of the population. It's more common in boys than girls. Between the ages of 4 and 17, it's about 13% of boys that are diagnosed, at least in the U.S., and those are numbers from 2011. About 5.5% of girls. So it is a little bit more of a male thing, but a lot of that has to do with some of the behavioral problems that males are a little bit more likely to demonstrate, and people are left kind of scratching their heads as to what's the problem with all this.
Okay, so think about, you are a kindergarten teacher. You have 22 kids in your classroom, and you have a boy who is climbing on top of the desk, who runs outside the door, who's always talking, who interrupts you when you're teaching, who's jumping up and down, who's poking his neighbor. He's a space invader, right?
Yeah.
And you have possibly a girl, I'm being a little bit overly general here, who's looking out the window and thinking about, who can't focus and gets distracted by the noise out the window. Very different presentation. Which is more disruptive to your setting?
The boy.
The boy. Who is more likely to get the therapeutic intervention? Who is more likely to be noted by the teacher?
The boy.
Or by the parent? Who's going to be more disruptive in the home scene?
The boy. Definitely the boy.
Right. So is that parent is more likely to bring the boy to the pediatrician and say, this child can't behave, runs away from me in the grocery store and can't sit down at the dinner table to eat dinner. So I think we have to be very careful when diagnosing.
I think another misconception with ADHD is that it's an affliction for boys. There are a lot of girls who go undiagnosed, and I think the reason is that a lot of times boys who have ADHD will act out in class, whereas the girls tend to be more inward. So a girl with ADD or ADHD might, for example, doodle and just not act out. So the teacher isn't having any experience of disruption and therefore wouldn't necessarily notice that the kid had it to get them tested. And unfortunately, in the past, I've seen, this is a long, long time ago, but some teachers just think the girl wasn't very bright instead of realizing that she had attention issues. And it's unfortunate sometimes when you have to have somebody fall down or act out, to be able to get an intervention.
Why doesn't anyone think ADHD is real?
ADHD has been around for a long time. Years ago, it was called minimal brain dysfunction. Many people for many years have thought it's a fake diagnosis. It's poor parenting. It's a child who's eating too much sugar. It's just boys being boys. I've heard that one too. They're just being a boy. And it is very clear that this is a true neurobehavioral, it's a brain-based disorder. The research is very clear. There are frontal lobe of the brain implications. It is a real disorder. Those myths are not helping these children.
I think that today, because there is so much technology, especially in the education field, that a lot of people tend to say like, no, it's not, that's not a real disability. It's just because they're looking at social media all the time. I think that it absolutely is a real disability, and it needs to be acknowledged, because if it's not addressed, then the student isn't able to learn in their least restrictive environment, and they aren't able to access the curriculum when they are fully capable to do so academically. They just need different interventions and modifications or accommodations to get to the objective.
It's real.
Yeah, you
it's definitely real, Yeah.
If I don't have ADHD, then what do I have?
Yeah.
There's something wrong.
Students with ADD absolutely can learn and will learn.
And ADHD is not a death sentence. It's an opportunity to take a look and get to know yourself and learn from other people about yourself.
And I think one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is to view the children and their families, the children you're working with and their families, with compassion. View them with compassion. Try to see their world through their eyes and try to connect with them.
way back, I used to front like Angle out, Mechanicsburg, Anchorage, and Dar es Salaam. Well, home in New York with champagne and disco, tapes from LA/San Francisco, but actually Oakland and Alameda. Your girl was in Berkeley with a communist reader. Mine was in tune with a boombox and Walkman. I was a horrible girl that was back then.
Anyone want to be in my documentary? It's about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a very real thing. Kyle, John, anyone. It's the next Blackfish.